Dana White just dropped a bunch of fight announcements on us, and there's so much to discuss. So let's just jump right into it. First of all, I do want to say I'm very happy we finally gotten some announcements because a lot of divisions felt kind of stuck. Featherweight is one of them. Welterweight is one of them. We didn't really know what was going to happen in these divisions or when we were going to get an official announcement about any of these divisions. Another division that's stuck right now is heavyweight, and it would be great to see some announcements about that, right? But you know, we get what we get, right? So let's start with the first thing that was announced today on Instagram Live. Leon Edwards versus Sean Brady. Now, when I first heard this, I was actually very, very pissed. I was like, there's no way Jack Della Maddalena pulled out, and that's his big announcement. That's his breaking news. Breaking news, Jack Della Maddalena pulls out. Your UFC fight night in London just got worse. It's now Sean Brady, who, yeah, he's a top 5 contender. And, he's been looking good recently. But, bro, he got finished by Belal on the feet. Like, I think he's the only fighter in history who can say that. So it's like a really bad look. I think whenever I see Sean Brady, I know he did good against Gilbert Burns and he beat, like, I don't know, Kelvin Gastelum. But, like, whenever I see him, I just think Belal finished this guy on the feet. Like, Belal finished him on the feet. Belal's a good fighter when he mixes it up, when he wrestles. Belal didn't shoot a single takedown on this guy and he just finished him. So that's a very, very bad look for Sean Brady. But, he doesn't have a lot of hype, So if this was the only announcement, I would be very upset. But given what we were told later, this is actually one of the best outcomes for Leon Edwards. In terms of the top 5, who else is we going to fight? There's no one else in the top 5 that would make sense for Leon Edwards, right? There's obviously Jack Della Maddalena, who's not fighting him anymore. Number 3 is, I think, Shavkat or Usman, I forget, and he's already fought Usman, and Shavkat was looking at a title shot. And then there's him, number 1. So in the top 5, there's nobody for him unless he wants to fight low and go for Buckley or go for Ian Gary. But that wouldn't really make sense to give Ian Gary 2 number 1 contender fights, like, in a row. Doesn't really make sense. Him versus Buckley would make sense, but the Sean Brady fight, it's a good fight. I'm happy they announced it. Anyways, actually, just skip over Volkanovski for a second and let's go straight to Jack Della Maddalena. Pulled out of his fight against Leon Edwards, or not pulled out, I should say. He was removed. Like, he was forcibly removed from that fight, offered a different fight, and he took it. I wouldn't blame him. Either get a number 1 contender fight or get a title shot. Just skip the number 1 contender bullshit and go right to the title shot. I'm very, very happy this is being made because, number 1, I think Jack Della Maddalena was the true number 1 contender. I know they already booked Shavkat versus Belal, but then it fell apart, and they did Shavkat versus Ian Gary, and he won. And, like, after winning your fight, what are they going to do? Just strip you of that title shot now? Like, he had a title fight. It fell apart. They gave him Ian Gary. He beat Ian Gary. What's he going to do? No longer be the number 1 contender? But I thought before that fight was even booked that Jack Della Maddalena deserved it way more than Shavkat Rakhmonov. Because Jack Della Maddalena had finished Gilbert Burns, who was a top 5 opponent at the time. He was ranked number 5 when he beat him. Or when Jack Della Maddalena beat Gilbert Burns when Gilbert Burns was ranked number 5. That's a top 5 win. Shavkat Rakhmonov beat like a number 8 ranked Jeff Neal and then a number like, I think 8 or 9 or 7 ranked Wonderboy. And that makes him the number 1 contender. Like, are you serious? The guy did not have a good resume. Yes, 100% finish rate. Yes, he was undefeated. He had that hype behind him. He had that aura. I'm actually going to make a video about the biggest aura merchants in every division, and Shavkat will be my pick for welterweight, because Shavkat is getting a title shot off of pure aura, which he lost in his fight against Ian Gary. And I, before that fight, was saying that Shavkat's really overrated. His wrestling kind of sucks. His striking is not that great. Like, he's a good fighter, but I don't think he's champ material. So I'm happy that the true number 1 contender gets this shot against Belal Muhammad. And I'm happy that we don't have to see Belal versus Shavkat because I think Belal would just ragdoll Shavkat. I think Jack Della Maddalena beats Belal Muhammad. And my vision for the welterweight division has been that Jack Della Maddalena eventually comes along and finishes Belal Muhammad. And that opens up the way for one of my favorite fighters, Islam Makhachev, to finally get his chance to fight at 170. Because right now, Belal is the only thing that's preventing him from fighting at 170. Because they trained together a few times. Belal kind of cozied up to them. Part of me does think that was kind of like a strategic move on his behalf. Like, yeah, let me cozy up with these guys. That way I never have to deal with Islam moving up or anything like that. But I did hope that Jack Della Maddalena would finally get his shot so he could finish Belal Muhammad, because I do believe he will. I'm very, very convinced that he will. I don't see how he loses this fight unless he just gets ragdolled for 5 rounds straight. I think if you give Jack Della Maddalena, what a fucking mouthful of a name, bro. Please, we're calling him JDM, all right? If you give JDM a chance, he will finish you. He will knock you out. He did it with Gilbert Burns. Gilbert Burns was doing that, lay and pray tactic against him. And the moment he got up, he landed a beautiful knee. Some may call it a fluke. I call it good timing, and I call it chasing that finish. So I think he'll beat Belal, even if Belal takes him down, which I think he will. Belal doesn't really have a submission threat. He'll just hold you down there. Belal doesn't really submit people. He doesn't TKO people. He TKO'd Sean Brady, but he doesn't really take people down and just beat him up and finish him, right? So I think Della Maddalena will get up, chase the finish down, and knock out Belal. He's got power in his hands, and Belal has a solid chin, but I think JDM can crack it. He has very good boxing. What else is on this card? Right, I don't really give a shit. I'm not talking about that. I don't really got time for that. Anyways, we got more exciting stuff to talk about. Sorry, Shevchenko. Anyways, Volkanovski versus Lopes for the vacant featherweight title. Ilia Topuria chose to move up. And what do I think about that choice? Well, first of all, what do I think about this matchup? I think this is a good matchup. If Ilia is not in the picture, obviously these are the 2 top contenders that need to fight for the belt. I thought they were going to do Volkanovski versus Lopes for an interim title. When Dana White was reading out their names, I thought he was going to say interim title. And I thought he was going to say, in the meantime, we have Topuria versus Makhachev. But no, Topuria's just going to move up and vacate, and they're going to fight. I'm favoring Volk in this matchup. I know his age is a big question. I know he's been out for a while. He's only been out for like a year. Like, I think a few days ago was the 1-year anniversary of him getting slept by Ilia Topuria. It was like February 17th or something like that, because Ilia posted like a happy birthday video for his UFC belt. But in that fight with Ilia, yes, he got chinned, but he looked very, very good. And it took a very calculated barrage of strikes from Ilia to back Volkanovski up against the fence and then sleep him. When I see Diego Lopes fight, I don't see that same strategy or skill, okay? Diego Lopes looks like just like a slugger who goes in there and just dogs it out and knocks people out, okay? And his best moments are usually in the first round. Now with Ilia Topuria, Volkanovski kind of shut him out in the first round. And Ilia Topuria usually has bad first rounds against people, He usually loses the first round of most of his fights. Like, look at his fight against Holloway. He lost the first round. Volkanovski, he lost the first round. Against Jai Herbert, he was dropped badly in the first round. Bryce Mitchell had a good first round against him. So, Ilya's not like this guy who just goes out in round 1 and then gasses out. But I think Lopes is kind of that guy. I think Lopes, after the first round, really drops off a cliff. That's what I've kind of been feeling in his last few fights. Yes, he's had a lot of first round finishes, so it's kind of hard to judge how he looks outside of the first round, besides his short notice debut. But when he fought Dan Ige, he didn't look great. Dan Ige looked pretty good against Diego Lopes. But in Diego Lopes' defense, he weighed in at 145 and then weighed back in at 155 for Brian Ortega, and then weighed back in at like 161 for Diego Lopes to fight at a catch weight of 165 pounds. So, like, probably not in the best condition. And he beat Danny Gay in the end. But then you look at Brian Ortega. Yes, he rocked Ortega, but Ortega's really not a good striker. He has bad striking defense, and he got dropped by Yair Rodriguez. The moment I saw him get dropped like a sack of potatoes against Yair, I said, it's over. Just give Lopes the win. We can skip that fight. Like, Lopes is going to smoke this guy, and he did. But in that fight, I thought he displayed a lot of low fight IQ. I remember saying this when the fight first happened. He threw a lot of finishes there. Like, there was a big opportunity for a finish in round 1, and even an opportunity in round 3. But every time he would hurt Brian Ortega, he would try and go, like, for some sort of choke. Like, he'd try and get the back and submit him. I think he was trying to make a statement, but like, bro, it's the first round of your fight. You want to make a statement, just put him out cold, get a TKO win. Like, why are you throwing the finish away? There was multiple moments like that in that fight, and I remember it was such an issue. I made a comment on social media, on Instagram. I posted something about it. I said, like, this guy has terrible fight IQ. And like, he does that neck touch thing. Like, he doesn't look great. I'm not going to lie. He does not look great to me. I think a guy like Volkanovski will be able to manage his distance against Diego Lopes. Maybe get cracked a few times, but I trust in Volkanovski's chin. Yes, he got slept by Topuria. Yes, he got TKO'd by Makhachev. But he's had a year to recover. He's been training. Every video I see of him on Instagram, he's training. He's locked in. He looked very good against Ilya before he got slept. Like, he was sharp. He was quick. I think that Volkanovski that fought Ilya Topuria with a better chin, more time to recover from the Makhachev loss, I think that version of Volkanovski would smoke Diego Lopes. I'm very happy we're actually not getting the Volkanovski-Ilya rematch, because if Ilya stuck around, I think that's the fight they would have to make. Because they kind of skipped over Volkanovski to do the Max Holloway fight. It was a huge fight. They had to do it. But Volkanovski was a champ for a while. 5 title defenses, I believe. You know, the GOAT of that division. He loses 1 title fight, and now all of a sudden you're not going to give him his immediate rematch. You gave Adesanya like 3 immediate rematches. You know? All the champions get immediate rematches except for Volkanovski all of a sudden. So, yes, I do believe Ilya would have just knocked him out again, which is why I was not super excited for that fight. But Volk does deserve that shot. Now that Ilya's out of the picture, though, he's kind of blessing us right now. Like, we don't have to see that fight over and over again. We don't have to see Volk just die at the hands of Ilya Topuria. We can see a fight where there is a question mark, where there is like some sort of ambiguity. It's not like, okay, Ilya's just going to kill him again. Let's just get it over with so we can do the Lopes fight and the Movsar fight. Let's just get this out of the way. I hate fights like that. That bullshit where you just to get things out of the way. Oh, let's just do the Volkanovski fight so we can move it out of the way and then we can go on to the other contenders. Strickland, I felt like Sean Strickland was a fight like that. Him versus Duplessis 2. I thought that was a fight where it's like, okay, let's just get that out of the way. You know, he had a controversial loss and then he came back and he got a win over Costa. It was the most boring fight I've ever seen in my life, but it's a win. And, you know, let's just get it out of the way. Let's do the rematch so then we can go on to Duplessis versus Chimaev or Duplessis versus Imavov. The exciting fights that people care about. Let's just get the Strickland fight out of the way. So if any fight, if you're looking at it and you're thinking like, you know, let's just get out of the way, that's a bullshit fight. So Volkanovski versus Topuria 2 was a fight like that, where you just want to get it out of the way so then we can do Topuria versus Lopes or Makhachev. I'm happy we don't have to see that anymore. Now to talk more about, oh yeah, by the way, there's also Paddy Pimblett versus Michael Chandler. I think Michael Chandler actually wins this one. I know a lot of people are saying Paddy Pimblett wins it. I know a lot of people, you know, are shitting on Michael Chandler. I do think Michael Chandler kind of sucks. I don't think he's top 5 material. I don't think he's champion material in the UFC. But he's an exciting fighter, and he has a good skill set. And I don't think Paddy Pimblett is good at all. Like, are we all forgetting that, you know, Paddy Pimblett lost to Jared Gordon? Excuse me if I'm not wrong. All right, so he fought Jared Gordon, and then he fought Tony Ferguson, and then he fought Bobby Green. So, versus Jared Gordon, looked like shit. He lost the fight. Tony Ferguson, he beat Tony Ferguson, but I think he was the only person not to finish Tony Ferguson on his, like, 10-fight losing streak. Everyone else finished Tony Ferguson. Justin Gaethje. Not Charles Oliveira, sorry. But Justin Gaethje finished him. Beneil didn't. Yeah, I'm tripping. Sorry, nobody finished this guy. But I just made up a stat there. I like to apologize. But Michael Chandler, let me rephrase what I was saying here. Michael Chandler fought an earlier version of Tony with less losses. Yes, he was still on a losing streak, but he wasn't on like a 7-fight losing streak. It was more like 4, okay? And he put that guy out cold. Bobby Green fought that Tony Ferguson after Michael Chandler, and he submitted him. He choked him out. Michael Chiesa submitted him. Paddy Pimblett took him to decision, and Paddy Pimblett looked like he was gassing out in round 3. I don't know if anyone remembers that, but in round 3, Paddy Pimblett looked like he was really slowing down, and that's why I picked Bobby Green to beat Paddy Pimblett. Obviously, it didn't happen, because Bobby Green's an idiot who shot for a takedown. Like, why would you do that? That's the most un-Bobby Green thing to do. Is that even my fault? But Bobby Green got choked out in round 1. I don't see Paddy Pimblett choking out Michael Chandler, especially not in round 1. And if there's this big question mark on Paddy Pimblett's cardio, and this is a 5-round fight, you can see it right here. 5-round co-main. Read that. 5-round co-main event. Paddy Pimblett might have a good first round. Might have a good second round. I don't trust Paddy Pimblett to get a knockout. I don't trust him to get a sub. Like, why would I pick this guy if I don't trust him to get a finish and I don't believe in his cardio? There's nothing going for this guy. I think Michael Chandler is going to beat this guy. Michael Chandler is used to the big stage, used to those exciting moments. Paddy Pimblett, I don't think he'll be able to handle the heat. So there's that. Now let's go back to, Volkanovski versus Diego Lopes. I'm very tired right now. I'm just trying to make this video quickly and put it out there before I go to sleep. Now, I'm actually happy that Ilya moved up, and I think it's the smartest choice he could make right now because there's nothing left for him at 145. Yes, there's Diego Lopes. Yes, there's Movsar-Evloev, but there's no exciting matchups. Everyone looks at the 145 division and sees victims for Ilia Topuria. That's not an ideal scenario to be in. You don't want to look at a fight with Diego Lopes, he has good power. He's a solid contender. You don't want people to be like, okay, Topuria is just going to murder this guy. Because that way, if you slip up, you get caught, you lose. It's like, damn, this guy lost to him. He's not supposed to do that. You don't want to go into matchups that are so favorable for you. Like, there's no benefit. If you win, they're like, yeah, of course he was going to win. And if you lose, it's like, this guy sucks. So, like, what the hell are you getting out of it? There's no question mark. I talk about this question mark, this ambiguity. There's no ambiguity when Topuria is fighting people at 145 because they're all victims. They're all victims. Lopes is a victim. Movsar is a victim. Who is the Yair Rodriguez? Victim. They're all victims for my boy Ilya. So there's nothing left for him. He beat Volkanovski. People thought he couldn't do it. I thought he could do it. I've been riding with Ilya Topuria since day one. I thought he was going to knock out Volkanovski. I thought he was going to knock out Holloway too. And he had doubters in each of those fights. Oh my God, I'm stuttering like crazy right now. Sorry, please forgive me, guys. No water around me, and I'm so tired. That's what made those fights exciting. He was hyping up that fight with Volkanovski, and he knocked him out. And people didn't think he could, and they're like, oh shit, he did it. Well, he's not going to do it to Holloway, though. He did it to Holloway. Those fights were exciting because they were so polarizing. I remember arguing with my friends for months leading up to the Holloway fight saying Topuria is going to do it, and they were like, no, man, I don't think so. No, man, he's really not all that. I mean, if Volkanovski hadn't already been knocked out by Makhachev, I mean, it would be a completely different story. Okay, we'll see. And then we saw. And it was a very, very exciting fight because of that hype. Now, a fight between him and Movsar-Evloev, zero hype. Him and Diego Lopes, zero hype. Nobody cares. I repeat to you, nobody cares. Now, also, he could stick around at 145 and just farm title defenses like champions usually do and should do, really. I mean, if you're a champion, yes, you should defend your title. But is that better for his resume to get people like, okay, Diego Lopes, Movsar-Evloev on his resume? Or is a win over Islam Makhachev better for his resume? I think a win over Islam Makhachev. I think Makhachev, Volkanovski, and Holloway are all top 10 fighters all time. And Ilya has already beaten two of those guys. He wants the third. Now, obviously, Makhachev doesn't really want to fight Ilya because people shit on him for having a tough fight with a featherweight. But if you really think about it, his win against Volkanovski is the best win he's ever had in his career because Volkanovski is a very high caliber opponent. So I don't think just because that guy's a featherweight, we have to diminish the win, right? I think people who say that are just trolls, and Islam shouldn't take them seriously. And I do kind of wish we got that champ-champ matchup of Topuria versus Makhachev, but I don't think we will. Ilya moving up and vacating his title shows me that he's not getting the Makhachev fight, because if he was getting that fight, they would just make this an interim title fight, and they would give Ilya Topuria a champ opportunity. That's how you market a star. That's how you promote a fight. You have a super fight. 2 belts. 2 champions fighting each other. But they didn't do that. They instead made him vacate the title. That shows me he's not fighting Islam Makhachev. And Islam has said that if Topuria moves up and beats a contender at lightweight, then he will fight him. And I get that way of thinking from Makhachev's side. Because yes, I do think that if he beats Ilya, regardless of whether or not Ilya has beaten any lightweight contenders, I think that's a good win. I think that's a very good win for Islam Makhachev if he beats Ilya Topuria. I think that's his toughest fight right now. Ilya Topuria. It's tougher than Arman. It's tougher than an Oliveira rematch. It's tougher than Justin Gaethje. It's tougher than Belal. I think the Topuria fight is the biggest question mark in the UFC right now. It's such an even fight because Topuria has a wrestling background. He can probably defend the takedowns of Islam Makhachev, especially if Dustin Poirier can. And Ilya has just power in his hands that cripples his opponents. He knocked out Max Holloway. You're telling me Max's chin is worse than Islam's? No, I think Islam has a worse chin than Max. I think if Topuria can knock out Max, he can knock out Islam. Now, maybe his wrestling is too much, and he just takes him down and submits him in round 1, or just keeps taking him down and interrupting his striking flow, and Topuria can't get any flurries going, can't land any punches. I doubt that. I honestly, if that fight was going to happen, I would pick Topuria to win, because I trust Topuria to defend the takedowns and to be able to land the knockout combination. Because Islam absorbs strikes. He's not some Khabib-style fighter who just takes you down and it's over. Fight's over. You cannot get up. He'll find the choke. He'll just beat the shit out of you. Fight's over. He does not dominate people like that. I think he's better than Khabib all time in terms of resume, and I think he's a more well-rounded fighter. But he doesn't just dominate people. Anytime he's dominated an opponent, especially in recent history, since he's won the belt, it's been on short notice, which is not a dig at him because his opponents are pulling out and he's getting short notice replacements. That's not his fault. But I'm just trying to show you that the guy doesn't just run through everybody. Okay? He ran through Charles Oliveira. That's like the one guy in his title run that he actually just ran through. How bad is Charles, guys? Sorry, I'm just joking. He ran through Charles, yes. Then he had a very, very competitive fight with Volkanovski. And then he finished him quickly on short notice, and then he had a very competitive fight with Dustin Poirier. And everyone expected him just to ragdoll Poirier and submit him in the first round. No, he had a very competitive fight with him. And then he destroyed Moicano, again on short notice. But the guy has tough fights. Even Oliveira was doing good in that first round. It wasn't just like, oh, Oliveira. Like, he lost the first round, I'm pretty sure. But he had his moments, and he was holding his own. And then Makhachev eventually got the finish in round 2 over a guy who's known to be chinny. Oliveira is known to get dropped a lot and just persevere. Just dog it out with his opponents. Topuria, I think, is a lot more durable, and he can absorb some shots, and he has very good recovery, good grappling, and excellent striking. Okay, so if that fight happened, I would take Topuria to win. Now, that's a side point. Topuria wants to lock down that Islam Makhachev fight, because if Topuria beats Islam Makhachev, he's one of the greatest of all time. I think he already is one of the greatest of all time because of his last 2 wins, amazing wins. But if he beats Makhachev, bro, this guy soars into like top 5 talks so quickly. Top like 3 maybe. Like, this guy has the best back-to-back-to-back wins if he beats Islam Makhachev. Same for Islam. If he beats Topuria, he becomes like maybe the one of the second or third greatest fighter of all time. Like, he becomes very, very high on the GOAT list, in my opinion, if he beats Topuria. Now, Islam doesn't want to fight Topuria. He doesn't want to give him that champ opportunity because Topuria hasn't really cleared out his division. He hasn't really done shit as champion. Besides, I guess, beat the fucking 2 toughest guys in his division. But he hasn't, like, racked up the defenses like people usually do when they move up. So he said, no, I don't want to give that guy the chance. I don't want people to shit on me for defending against featherweights. I'm good. Now, if Topuria vacates his belt and says, okay, fuck featherweight, I don't really want to do anything with featherweight, I'm going to move up and become the #1 contender at lightweight, whether by smoking Arman Tsarukyan, Charles Oliveira, or Dustin Poirier. And then he does beat them, let's say. And now Islam has no excuse. Okay, well, who are you going to fight? Oh, I could fight Arman, I could fight Charles. Yeah, well, fucking Topuria just beat him. So what do you want to do now? Okay, you have to fight Topuria. And then we finally get that fight. Now, what I think they're going to do, there is those options of Poirier or Charles or Arman. I think Poirier would make sense because Poirier has been looking for a retirement fight. He wants to fight soon. He fought like last year. He lost. He said he's looking for one more fight. I guess if he beats Topuria, he might stick around a bit longer. But sorry, I'm losing my voice here. But I don't think he beats Topuria. I think they'll book that. Dustin Poirier versus Ilia Topuria. It's a very electric fight. Lots of striking. Or Topuria versus Oliveira. Or Topuria versus Arman. But I think it would make more sense to book Oliveira versus Arman 2. And then do Topuria versus Dustin Poirier. And then you have 2 #1 contenders. Or 2 contenders who have a argument for a title shot. You know what I'm saying? Type shit. So, yeah, I think that's what they will do. And I think it's very smart for Ilia to do that. And I'm very excited to see that matchup they make with him. Yeah, let's just end this off by quickly going through this this bout list that they have posted here. So we just talked about this at length. We talked about this as well. Yeah, Rodriguez versus Patricio Pitbull. He's coming over from PFL. You know, good for him. I actually have never seen Patricio Pitbull fight. I'm not gonna lie. I don't watch PFL at all. So this is probably a good fight though. Anyways, Jeff Neal versus Carlos Prates. This is a very good fight. You know, Jeff Neal is just that rite of passage. Yo, real talk, how many contenders have gotten into the top 10 or top 5 by beating Neil Magny and then Jeff Neal? Like, is that just the meta? Ian Gary did it. He beat Neil Magny and then he fought Jeff Neal. He beat Jeff Neal. Shavkat did it. And now Carlos Prates is going to do it because I'm taking him to beat Jeff Neal. I think his striking is really good. But, yeah, just the rite of passage, man. Neil Magny, Jeff Neal, and then fight some fucking... some karate-style fighter like MVP or Wonderboy. Pick one. Anyways, Krylov versus Dominic Reyes is also a good fight. I'll probably take Krylov in that fight. Dan Ige versus Sean Woodson. Yan Zhao Nan versus Verna. I'm not even going to finish that. Jim Miller versus Chase Hooper. That's already been announced. Some of these fights have already been announced. Yeah, Darren Elkins. Cedric Dumas. All right. Yeah, good fights all around. Really good card. I'm looking forward to it. Lots of good announcements from our good friend Dana White. I'm looking forward to these fights, man. Like and subscribe. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys later.